Hi, I'm Robin Eschler, and I'm with GENiSYSS. I'm the marketing director. I'm here with you today to talk about the era of DNA. If any of you'd like to visit us, we are at Eureka Park, booth 75011. Okay, looking at the era of DNA, many of you may first think about medicine. DNA has really put a much deeper meaning into personalized medicine. And that is because DNA is being used in a variety of capacities. For one, we're able to test now to gauge the effectiveness of certain drugs. In other words, some of you may have noticed that some people have a more exaggerated response to certain drugs and some people don't respond to it at all. This is very DNA related. So we can definitely save money for insurance companies, for individuals, as well as for nursing facilities and many other places by getting the drug right the first time. Nutrigenomics is an interesting new field now as well. DNA is being used to help identify as well as treat digestive diseases such as Crohn's. We also are using nutrigenomics to help identify the best fitness plan. Some people do really well carbo loading, others don't. So not only can the diet be more tailored in a fitness plan, but also your exercise regime can also be helped by understanding how your DNA is really relating to what you're doing. Identifying predispositions has been in the news a lot lately. Angelina Jolie is a good example, but others are learning about predispositions to cancer, diabetes, autism, Tourette's syndrome, and a host of other diseases by looking at a few of the markers on your DNA. So the genomic signature is really becoming as important as your blood type in determining your medical treatment and care. All right, let's take a look at the next step, which is DNA in the cloud. You may have heard about how Google and IBM and Amazon and Microsoft, they're all competing to start cloud storage for DNA. Well, why would anybody want to store DNA results in the cloud? Well, for one thing, genomic sequencing or gene sequencing involves terabytes of information for one person. And if you look at the Cancer Institute right now, they want to store 2.6 petabytes. And that only covers a few thousand patients that have been in clinical trials. And they are willing to pay $19 million to move this information into the cloud. So now you can see why Google and IBM and Amazon and Microsoft are all competing. It's a tremendous opportunity for them. In addition to these companies, Procter & Gamble is another example. Well, how on earth could Procter & Gamble use DNA? They already have. They're actually a genomics leader in their industry. They've used it to develop new diapers that have better rash control. They've used it to develop better dandruff shampoo. And they are anticipating being able to identify lotions and things like that according to your DNA that are going to be more effective, and a host of other applications are possible. Now, there's also something, since we're putting it in the cloud, we've started talking about the DNA internet. Well, like the original internet, it's going to primarily be scientists and doctors initially using it. But our anticipation is that it's going to go far, far beyond that. Let's take a look at that and what that means. Consider the size of DNA. It's only 6 microns. You can't see it with the human eye. And yet, when you unravel it, one DNA from one cell, if you were able to uncoil it, it would stretch out about 6 feet. And if you took all the cells in your body and you did the same thing for each of those cells and laid them end to end, do you have any idea how much information is stored? That end-to-end chain of DNA would go twice around our solar system. So people like Drew Endy at Stanford University and his team of scientific biologists are looking into actually creating rewritable memory with DNA. They're using the genes, being able to turn it on and off as the equivalent of a 0 and 1 in binary language. And the beauty of using DNA as rewritable memory is that the cell actually expends absolutely no energy in storing that memory. So there's tremendous opportunities that just boggle the imagination if you think about it. Okay, DNA in children. Parents really need to be more and more aware of how DNA is important in their child's life. Already, when parents are faced with having a child, choices need to be made that include whether or not they're going to store the newborn's cord blood. Well, many are actually moving ahead and doing that. The difficult part is that it can cost thousands of dollars, and then there's annual ongoing costs for keeping it in those lab freezers. So the alternative is to store just the DNA. And that, due to our introduction of our DNA vault, is only a few tens of dollars. And the long-term benefits are virtually the same. You can take DNA from a newborn and use it later in their life by putting it into a stem cell. And the stem cell actually doesn't even have to be their own. It can be a donor stem cell that is compatible with their body. And then that therapeutic DNA can be delivered anywhere in the body very effectively. Well, why would you want to do this? Well, if you've heard of epigenetics, it's the study and understanding of how DNA changes. The actual code, the AGCT, doesn't change, but the chemical surrounding that pattern does change, and it's something called methylation. And that's what's associated with disease. Exposure to the sun, exposure to chemicals, pollution, even stress can cause that methylation of DNA and predispose us towards certain diseases. So naturally, the younger you are, the more quote unquote clean your DNA is going to be. So you want to start taking samples of your DNA as early as possible, and newborn is certainly ideal, but it's important to start as soon as possible. The other nice thing that I'll get more into, but having to do again with our DNA vaults, is that our patent is to store DNA together with digital information. So why is that important? Well, you not only have a DNA history that you can acquire through your lifetime by taking samples at intervals through your life, but you can also store important information, whether it's medical information, whether it's fingerprints, or whether it's contacts or videos, audios, whatever. That can be very crucial information in case of emergency, and certainly important to have for your child as they're growing. So GENiSYSS really is bringing the power of DNA to the consumer. And why is that important? Well, not only is DNA expanding in the various applications as we've just seen, but the cost to sequence a gene is dropping dramatically. Just less than a decade ago, it cost millions of dollars. Look at that, $100 million to sequence your gene, your DNA. It has now dropped to a few $1,000s, and it's dropping even more quickly within this decade, and possibly within the next few years. The cost of getting your DNA sequenced is going to be within reach of the average person. It won't be thousands of dollars. It may be less than 100. The other thing that GENiSYSS is providing is the ability to keep your DNA storage in your own hands. So you're not giving it to a laboratory for them to freeze and keep for you, but instead you're keeping it safe and secure in your home. And in the case of the child ID, you can even keep it on your keychain if you want to have that with you immediately in case of emergencies. The patented material that we use in the DNA storage wells actually kills any viruses or bacteria, so it's totally safe that way. Plus, the software that we've provided on board the digital memory is encrypted and password protected. By the way, the system that we are using, the materials that we are using, also keep that gene safe for many years. We haven't even been able to find the end date yet of how long that blood sample on that patented material will still be viable. So we anticipate it's going to be many, many years. Okay, here's a look at the GENiSYSS DNA Vault. And this is how it works. You take a tiny drop of blood, you put it there in the little storage well. That's your DNA. And at the right-hand tip is your memory module that you can plug into your computer, and you will see how you can store medical and emergency information. You can store more sentimental things, such as your family history, genealogy, favorite stories, photographs, memories, audios, videos, as I mentioned. All of that, between the medical, the practical, the sentimental, becomes a time capsule of life that you can keep in your own possession and share forward. So even if you were to lead a very long and healthy life, you can still create a legacy that will benefit the whole family by keeping your DNA history and passing it forward to other generations. They have more information for their diagnosticians and medical doctors to use in treating and keeping them healthy, as well as we've mentioned fitness and products, personal products. All of that is going to be becoming very, very common. DNA is changing our lives in ways that silicon has changed our lives, and taking it even further. So start now to store your DNA. As far as GENiSYSS is concerned, the specific markets that we are addressing, as we talked a little bit about, include medical, senior. And what does senior mean? Well, the senior market is interested in leaving a legacy. Funeral homes are actually a wonderful place to capture not only the sentiment when you're letting go, but it's also the last place to capture that DNA sample. So it's very important that no matter what age you start storing your DNA so that you have it for other members in your family and for future generations. Also, nursing homes are going to find a huge savings for that drug matching information by using DNA. I've talked about parents, newborn, the emergency market, and genealogy is kind of a fun one. We already know that certain gene markers are used to help people find both living relatives, but also distant relatives back in history. You can learn whether or not you came from certain tribes around the world that have had various migration. So you can go back hundreds, if not thousands of years with DNA to help really fill out that family tree. So as I mentioned before, it is a time capsule of both practical and sentimental value. If any of you would like to contact us, we will be available at Eureka Park booth 75011, or you can reach us at these phone numbers, and we'd be happy to talk with you more. Thank you.